All right, what's up, people? It's your boy Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse, and welcome to another episode of the Black Muse Podcast. I'm churning them out, and I'm getting them out, and I'm getting this content created. So for this segment, this is going to be another segment in which I levy some criticisms against the Republicans that I think is fair. Um, so this story is about Joe Biden actually calling out Republicans recently um, for levying criticisms against his infrastructure bill, calling it socialist, and then turning around after the fact and then asking for the money that once his infrastructure bill passed, that there were provisions for them to get money. They asked for that money. How can you criticize a piece of legislation as socialist in nature and then turn around and then try to benefit from the piece of socialist legislation you voted down unsuccessfully? Right? Like if you had a vote of some kind where it's like, we're gonna vote to all, like, distribute money every once in a while, like once a week everybody gets $100, right? And you're like, nope, I vote against that. Like, that's socialism. I don't approve of socialism. And then you try to vote it down, it's unsuccessful, and now that money is being distributed every week, and so you turn around and sign up to receive that money, right? Wouldn't that make you hypocritical? Isn't that textbook hypocrisy? Like, if you were so against it in principle when you tried to vote it down and we're going to effectively prevent anybody else from benefiting from it, then why all after the fact are you benefiting from it? Why are you trying to get the money that you said was socialist money? What's that about? To whatever extent Republicans did this, they deserve criticism for sure, because that is hypocritical as fuck. And I don't think that the Republicans or the conservative types would tolerate hypocrisy of this sort from the left, the ones that demonize capitalism and then turn around and engage in capitalistic practices. Like, they call them out for that all the time. Well, if you're going to demonize socialism as somehow subpar or somehow above, below the fray or some shit, or somehow immoral, then you can't turn around and try to take advantage of socialist policy you deemed socialist, by the way. I mean, what else are we to think other than you're just a big fat hypocrite? So I want to show you the video in which Joe Biden levies these criticisms, and he's going to read an article from CNN that I think I found. Hopefully I found the right one he's referring to. He vaguely described it. If I didn't, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to show you the video. Go ahead.
They say, as my grandkids say, Google it. But the report that came out, CNN, it says, Republicans call Biden infrastructure program socialism. And then they ask for the money. And it goes through all the Republicans, the most conservative Republicans, who call it socialism, and how they're asking for it. A guy named Paul Gosar, he's written 3 separate letters to the administration asking for projects in his district. He says it enhanced the quality of life, that ease congestion, boost the economy. Voted against it, says it's all socialism. Go down the list. Kentucky Representative Andy Barr, the biggest socialist agenda. 3 different projects he wants, citing the importance of the safety and growth of his district. Rand Paul, I can go down the list. Look it up. Socialism. I didn't know there were that many socialist Republicans. Think about it. I'm serious. Let's get serious about taking care of ordinary people, regular people like I grew up. Folks, look, you can't make this stuff up. You got to say, and I got to say, I was surprised to see so many socialists in the Republican caucus. And folks, here's the bottom line. If Republicans take control of the Congress, these historic victories we just won for the American people are going to be taken away.
All right, so that was Joe Biden making, I think, a very substantive point, a very valid point, a point that's hard to argue against. I mean, well, I'll say this. I do think that there are certain facets of the infrastructure bill that could be criticized, and even criticized from the left, but also criticized from any other vantage point, including but not limited to the right. But labeling it as a blanketly a socialist policy because it involves some kind of social benefit or social welfare element to it, I think is a common mistake that the right makes. I think that there are valid reasons for having social safety net programs, particularly in the wake of what happened with COVID and how people's businesses were upended and things like that. If the government forces people to like stop going to work and shuts down the economy in order to try to address a global pandemic, then it does make sense for them to compensate people to the extent that those people's lives have been upended and they've been inconvenienced. And so, like, if you contextualize it properly, it's really hard to argue against certain things like that. Now, on the other hand, I do understand where the Republican conservative types are coming from because Democrats tend to get a little carried away with that type of shit. And so they want like everything to be a social welfare program. And so, like, yeah, there should be limits to that. You shouldn't just give away free money all the fucking time. Compensating people for under very extenuating circumstances makes sense. I'm cool for that. And having social safety net programs in general, I'm cool with. But when like the government spending is so like inordinate and like contributes to inflation, like no matter how compassionate you are, like there's a certain limit. There's a certain point at which you'd be like, yeah, no more free money for people because we can't fucking afford it. Right. And I think that the Democrats and the leftists in general have a hard time with that, with their modern monetary theory bullshit. They think that the government can just deficit spend into eternity and there be no negative consequences. That's weird. We're seeing the negative consequences of government overspending. At least that's part of what contributed to it right now with inflation. Blaming it on Vladimir Putin doesn't make any fucking sense, but whatever. Like, this is like basic economics. Like I learned that shit as a fucking freshman in college. Like like inflation is at least part the product of how much money you have in circulation and how much deficit spending that we're doing. The idea that deficit spending and the amount of money in circulation that we're printing don't contribute in any way, shape, or form to inflation is just seems so fucking ridiculous. And like I don't know, man. Leftists tend to want to just like reject basic shit that's been long since settled in every domain, including but not limited to basic fucking biology when it comes to who counts as a man and who counts as a woman, and apparently like economics 101 with this modern monetary shit theory bullshit. So yeah, I understand where the right wingers are coming from with that, but I wouldn't reject all social policy, all social welfare programs. I wouldn't reject food stamps for everybody. I wouldn't reject WIC. I wouldn't reject things like that. When it comes to universal basic income, I'm open minded. I mean, it really depends on what you're talking about. Like, so Andrew Yang's freedom dividend thing. I don't know how useful that would have been, or like it would have been useful to certain segment of the population for sure. But like, I don't know what the economic effects generally would be. I don't know to what extent it would contribute or exacerbate our current inflation trends that we're seeing right now, and that makes all the difference in the world to whether I would endorse a policy like that. But just the idea of the government having a social safety net for people generally, like social welfare, like I've been the benefactor of it in various different ways. Like it came in handy, like when me and my family needed it. I don't think it's the kind of thing that people should be dependent on, but people do live their lives in such a way where it's going to be a huge temptation to be dependent on that. So you got to have discipline. You got to have limitations on it. You can't just give free money perpetually and disincentivize people from actually working and shit like that. To whatever extent those policies would do that, then I think that there's a substantive critique of those kinds of policies. But if the policies, indeed, the policies are typically devised to help people out who are in hard and tough situations. And to whatever extent that they do that, I would approve of them, right? So to me, I'm trying to be nuanced here. I'm trying to account for all of the ills of those kinds of well-intended policies, as well as all of the benefits of those well-intended policies. Where I think the Republicans get it wrong is the Republicans seem to be unwilling to acknowledge the benefits of policies like that entirely because they're overly focused on not having over government spending or not having the government be too big or not having people be dependent on the government. But it's like, bruh, motherfuckers need help sometimes. And then you come off as callous if you're not at least willing to acknowledge that. And these are the same motherfuckers who are supposedly Christian and shit. Like Jesus Christ seems like the kind of person that would be for the downtrodden, who would be for helping people out, who would be for giving to the least of us and the poor, not against that, right, Christians? So I think the leftists have a substantive critique of that attitude. On the other hand, I think that the leftists, man, and I'm just going to reiterate it, I think that they go way too far in naively thinking that they can just give money, like the government can just give money away to people and help people indefinitely, and that's not going to have any negative or deleterious effects on people's will to like actually work for a living and actually like do like actually like step up to the natural struggles of life. Like if you're in the business of trying to alleviate all struggles for all people, you don't understand the value of struggle. Like I understand wanting to alleviate it when it's too much of a burden and people can't handle their struggles, and you want to give them a little help so that they can actualize themselves. That makes sense. But you don't want to alleviate all struggles for everyone everywhere. Like that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like it's not inherently bad to have some struggle. Right? Indeed, some of the most profound accomplishments in life are enabled by the fact that you overcame struggle. You don't want to deprive people of the opportunity to triumph because you take away all their struggles. And that's that special snowflake shit that the Republicans be talking about. So, like, I don't know, man. I wish that we could have more people that'll be a little bit more nuanced. Now, I said all that to try to get at kind of where I am, kind of in the middle from both extremes. But I haven't really said anything substantively about what a policy should look like. Ideally, if you're going to have any kind of social welfare policy that's going to give back to people in general, it should do it with limitations. That's basically the kind of policy position I will pursue. And then in the case of the infrastructure bill, it is a massive spending bill. And so there are implications for the deficit and things like that. And it seems like the Democrats don't give a fuck about any of those implications, including but not limited to inflation, which we're currently experiencing right now. Like I don't think that now is the best time to be doing massive spending bills, given how inflation is raking people over the coals right now, and then it's making them need even more help. What you go print more money? That's gonna make it worse. That's not solving the problem. So I mean, like the Republicans who come off as callous, there's some validity to object to massive spending bills, particularly right now in the wake of inflation. But like, I wouldn't object to it in principle, as if it's inherently evil to like have some kind of social welfare programs. That shit is ridiculous. And one of the and one of the biggest things that lets me know that those Republicans who are like all haughty and all principled or like fake faux principled and they're like, no, I'm anti-socialist, is they turn right around and ask for the goddamn money. So you ain't really against it that much. Clearly. So I'm gonna show a couple articles and then I'm gonna get into Kyle Kalinski's commentary because I think I'm gonna overlap with him at least slightly. Or probably mostly, to be honest. So this first article is going to be by Misuian. Let me see. I think I pronounced that wrong. All right. It is Misulian. I think that's how you pronounce it. Biden / Republicans seeking socialist funds. Now, I've already showed you the footage. I'm going to read you the article. While delivering an economic speech in Maryland on Friday, President Joe Biden called out Republican members of Congress who voted against his infrastructure bill, but are now asking his administration for funding for their districts. Biden criticized the most conservative Republicans who described the infrastructure bill as, quote, socialism. Biden singled out Arizona Congressman Paul Gosar, as well as Kentucky Representative Andy Barr and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Speaking at a Volvo plant, Biden told the audience he, quote, was surprised to see so many socialists in the Republican caucus, end quote. All right. So this is one of those slay queen moments for Joe Biden. He kind of owned the cons, and people like Kyle Kalinske are singing his praises because of it, partly because his point is substantive. His point is right. And one of the things that sticks in the crawl of a lot of people like Kyle Kalinske, the progressive types, is when Republicans make blatant contradictions or acts of hypocrisy in this way. They act like they're so against these socialist, quote unquote, socialist policies that are designed with the best of intentions to help people get a leg up in this harsh, cold world that we live in. But then they turn around and ask for the money for themselves. Right, like in the same kind of moral disgust those of you who may be right wingers or lean right had when you had all these Democrats preaching all that shit about how we needed to lock down for fucking 2 years, and then you saw motherfuckers like Gavin Newsom violating his own lockdown orders. The smug, pompous ass hypocrisy of that. Remember the moral disgust you felt then? Remember that shit? That's how the leftists feel when Republicans do shit like this. And they're right to feel that way, because that shit is textbook hypocrisy. Everything that involves some kind of social benefit to people that is designed to help the downtrodden and the least of us is not inherently bad or socialist, bruh. And I just wish, it's particularly the Christians, and I only speak to the Christians because I know I used to be one and I understand kind of how they think a little bit better. I wish that they would emulate the person who they're supposed to be following and the teachings that they say that they follow, which is Jesus Christ, because that mofo loved him some downtrodden people, some poor people. He cared a lot about the least of us, and I just wish that the Republicans would follow suit. All right. So now I'm gonna show that was the Neutral article. I'm gonna show the CNN article that he referred to before. Read a little bit of that. I think this is I hope this is the correct one that he was referring to. All right, CNN. It reads, Republicans repeatedly criticize Biden's infrastructure program, then they ask for money. So it singles out those people. Okay. From the U.S. Republican Rep Tom Emmer, Paul Gosar, and Ashley Henson, all three voted against the bipartisan infrastructure bill last year, but signed on to request for money from the legislation to fund projects for their constituents. Huh. Like, is there any way to steel man that? I don't even know how to steel man that. Like, it's socialist. I'm gonna vote against it. It got signed into law despite my attempt to vote against it, because the majority in the House and the Senate are Democrat right now. So now that it's here, we might as well get the money. Is there any way to steel man that is not hypocritical? Like, I genuinely don't know how to do that. Let's read. Last November, GOP Rep Tom Emmer of Minnesota released a statement slamming the passage of the infrastructure bill, arguing that it, quote, lays the groundwork for passage of President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar socialist wish list, end quote. Then in June, Emmer, the House Republican campaign chairman, leading attacks on Democrats supporting the law, quietly submitted a wish of his own. In a letter to Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Emmer expressed his hearty support for a multi-million-dollar grant to improve part of the Highway 65 in his district. The work was critical, Emmer argued, not just for his constituents, but for people over Minnesota. Crashes were leading to fatalities. Congestion was leading to huge delays. Plus, Emmer added, quote, this grant also strives to serve as a social justice measure, end quote. Okay, so I maybe there's a pathway to steelman it after reading that, because this makes it seem so. Well, okay, so now I have questions. So Tom Emmer of Minnesota released a statement slamming the passage of the infrastructure bill, arguing that it, quote, lays the groundwork for the passage of President Biden's multi-trillion-dollar socialist wish list. When he said that, was the version of the bill that he was voting against the most expensive one? Because I remember that there were different versions of them, and they brought down the price several times. So that context matters. If the version of it that ended up passing was lower than the one he was saying this against, then maybe he has some wiggle room here. I just don't know. I don't know what the spending is. Is it still $1 trillion? Is it still $1 trillion bill? I don't know that it is. So I guess I got to do some research on that. And then he asked for, so in a letter to Secretary Buttigieg, Emmer expressed his hearty support for a multi-million-dollar grant to improve part of a Highway 65 in his district. Okay, the support was critical, Emmer argued, not just for his constituents, but for the people all over Minnesota. Crashes were leading to fatalities, congestion, and leading to huge delays. The grant also strives to serve a social justice measure. So he wants money to fix potholes and shit like that. Yeah, I mean, I guess he's still asking for money from a bill that he tried to vote down. So there's some hypocrisy there. The question I asked before, I think I need to answer that question to fully jump on board with them, but because I don't know if CNN is playing games here. But assuming everything's on the up and up, I think that I would just be in alignment with them and saying that yeah, they deserve criticism because this seems like hypocrisy. If CNN is not playing games like that. Okay, Emmer's plea is one of dozens obtained by CNN in response to public records requests, full of instances like Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville modulating his tone from accusing the law of, quote, using fuzzy math and IO hide the real cost, end quote, to appeal to Buttigieg because, quote, as a former mayor, you understand better than anyone the time and money that goes into applying for highly competitive grants. The letter writers include high-profile attackers of government spending, as well as several in-tight re-election races, such as Florida Rep. Maria Elvedia Salazar and California Rep. David Valadao, who, like Emmer, slammed the Biden law in public and then behind the scenes asked for money from it. Cool. So one dynamic that I think I would be in alignment with for sure is that if you're going to publicly decry something, and then behind closed doors try to benefit from the thing that you said was bad, seems hypocritical. It seems hypocritical. I mean, it's just textbook hypocrisy. So yeah, they deserve like I don't like the two-facedness, the duplicitousness. I don't from the woke. I don't accept that shit from the Democrats. I'm not gonna accept that shit from the fucking Republicans. Fuck out of here. Most members have not publicly mentioned the letters they sent petitioning for money from the bill they derided. Many, when contacted by CNN about their request, either ignored questions or insisted that they were being consistent with their criticisms of the law with the request they made. I mean, this is fair criticism. There's no excuse for this. This is fair criticism to me. The leftists are right. They're just right. You can't. This is hypocrisy, dude. Like I'm trying to like make this like land for the people on the right who maybe like are a little hesitant to agree with this. Like, so imagine if you had a whole bunch. I guess my analogy that I used before worked. Like you had a whole bunch of leftists that were pro lockdowns, right? But then they were caught violating their own lockdown orders. They weren't even like abiding by their own goddamn rules, fam. And that shit was hypocritical as fuck. In public, they were talking all of that woke shit about how we needed to save grandma and how we needed to lock down for the good of the country. So we got to beat this virus. We got to come together in solidarity and all that bullshit that they said. And then motherfuckers like Gavin Newsom is at expensive ass fucking restaurants in contravention to his own goddamn lockdown orders. That shit was fucking annoying, fam. People was pissed the fuck off, including me. I can't leave my house for 2 years with Gavin Newsom having steaks and wine with the uppity ass white folk in contravention of lockdown orders that he put in place that I gotta abide by. It's the same shit. You say one thing in public and you do another thing in private. And all of the people on Fox News and all of the conservative types was right to point that out. Same shit. If you're going to have Republicans that are going to decry the infrastructure bill as socialism, as overspending, as what was it, using fuzzy math and IOUs to hide the real costs, as contributing to inflation in public, they talk all of that good game to the that their base wants to hear, and then in private, can I please have some of that money? Yeah, that's fucking hypocritical, fam. It's hypocritical in the exact same way. You say one thing in public, and then you do another thing behind closed doors. Now, there are some substantive differences. This hypocrisy doesn't involve locking people in their houses and shit, to be fair. But it's still hypocritical, fam. There's no justification for this. I just I just agree with the left on this, bro. Like Republicans, yeah, y'all can get this smoke. Conservatives, yeah. But it's the politicians that are doing this. It's the politicians. So I think I've said enough. So what I want to do is play a little bit of Kyle Kalinske here. All right, so here's Kyle Kalinske covering the same story. Let's go ahead and watch together, shall we?
So Joe Biden was giving a speech the other day, and man, he took quite a shot at the right here. This is something that we've been seeing more and more of recently from Joe. He used to be Mr. like, I'm the bipartisan guy, and I will always reach out to you, even if you spit in my eyeball. That's sort of changing recently, and it's changing for the better, in my opinion. So look at this line he takes against the right.
I saw there's a report. You guys can, as they say, as my grandkids say, Google it. But a report that came out, CNN, it says Republicans call Biden infrastructure program socialism. And then they ask for the money. And it goes through all of Republicans, the most conservative Republicans, who call it socialism, and how they're asking for it. A guy named Paul Gosar, he's written 3 separate letters to the administration asking for projects in his district. He says it enhance the quality of life, that ease congestion, boost the economy. Voted against it, says it's all socialism. Go down the list. Kentucky Representative Andy Barr, the biggest socialist agenda. 3 different projects he wants, citing the importance of safety and growth of his district. Rand Paul, I can go down the list. Look it up. Socialism. I didn't know there were that many socialist Republicans. Think about it. I'm serious. Let's get serious about taking care of ordinary people, regular people like I grew up. Folks, look, you can't make this stuff up. You got to say, and I got to say, I was surprised to see so many socialists in the Republican caucus. And folks,
imagine getting bodied by a half-dead Joe Biden. Republican politicians are getting straight up draxed by zombified Joe. Man, you love to see it. You love to see it. And look, the argument that he's making there, this is something that has been going on as long as I've been around and analyzing politics and soaking in our political landscape. This happens all the time. It happened, remember when Obama did, I think it was a $787 billion stimulus package. This was when we had the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008 and the Great Recession. And in the debate, the vice presidential debate in 2012, where it was Joe Biden versus Paul Ryan, Joe Biden cleaned the floor with Paul Ryan because Paul Ryan did the same thing. You know, he attacked the stimulus package as like big government spending, socialism, and I hate it. And then Biden, same thing. He had like letters from Paul Ryan saying, please, sir, can you please do a project in my district? I would please like to ask for $232 million if it's not too much to ask, sir. Thank you very much in advance. This is what these guys do. This is what they've always done. So they might pretend ideologically to be opposed to any of a number of government spending packages. But when the rubber hits the road and they realize, shit, I have to deliver for people in my district, in my home state, because I want to get reelected. So, you know, how can you get reelected? Well, one of the things you could do is update the infrastructure where, you know, your people happen to live. Update the roads, update the bridges, bring some jobs, whatever the case may be. Some sort of government spending to you know, revitalize the economy in your hometown or your home state, your district. And these guys do it all the time. I'm principled against government spending in every way, shape, and form because I'm a libertarian. Big government is bad, small government is good. Please, big government, give me money. I need to create these projects. I'm nothing without you. So, you know, Biden's making the argument, I thought socialism was bad. Now, remember, they define socialism as any kind of government spending. Okay, if you want to use that definition, you guys just said socialism is bad, but you're begging for a little bit of socialism in your life, aren't you? That's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you need in order to get reelected. Funny, when it comes time to get votes, everybody embraces socialism. Everybody embraces government money. All of a sudden, the ideological concerns are out the window. The small government's the only way to go. Government needs to be small enough to drown in the bathtub. All that big talk is gone. So, I like it, man. I like the attack. It also reminds me of Bernie's attack on the right that he does all the time, where he says, look, you guys say I'm a socialist, but you know what you are? Corporate socialists. Because you're fine with big government spending. You just want tax money going to CEOs and to billionaires and to corporations so they can pad their bottom line, make more profit, outsource more jobs. So we're all okay with government spending. You just want the government spending to go to the top 1%. I want the government spending to go to the people.
Man, I just fucking agree with Kyle. I'll tell you, bro. All right. Kyle's fucking right, and this is one of the reasons why I was actually attracted to Bernie Sanders in the first place, because that criticism of our politicians, particularly our Republican politicians, the GOP, is a salient one. Yeah, they have no problem politicking in such a way as to give money to the people who already have it and need it the least. So why can't we have people who advocate like they do so hard for the rich that advocate for the least of us? It's one of the reasons why I've never really been on board with these kind of that's socialism and socialism is bad. I just nah. If you've been among the least of us, as long as I have, if you've been literally homeless at any point in your life, if your parents have had to struggle when you were on food stamps at one point in time, and you relied on a lot of these social welfare programs for any stint in your life, not forever, but any momentary time in your life where you needed it because you were surviving, because life was kicking your ass, then you understand the utility of them in a fundamental way, and it's very intimate to you. So taking a policy position where you don't allow anybody else to get a leg up and benefit in the same way that you did is really hard to justify, fam. And so I just come from an experience where I never could justify that. And it's not just me. It was me and hella motherfuckers that I grew up with. We was all in the same boat. We was all broke. We was all eating top ramen noodles and shit. You know what I'm saying? But we were around affluence though. We knew people who had money. We knew about people who had money. I went to school in Chino Hills. Chino Hills is one of the most affluent places you can go to school in. And I couldn't even afford to fucking live in that city after a while, because we had a tough time making ends meet. But I wanted to benefit from going to that school that was very well funded. So Kyle is right. This is just straight textbook hypocrisy on the right. The right wingers need to hear this criticism. This is shameful criticism. Like, y'all can't be anti-government spending with your rhetoric and then be pro-government spending whenever it suits you politically. You can't do that shit, fam. Kyle's right. Now, I think that Kyle is celebrating Joe Biden's dunking on the cons a little bit too much, but I understand it, because it's a salient point. It's a fair criticism. The cons need to hear it, so I get it. What I don't like, and what I think we should be careful of, and I'm not holier than thou. I've done it too. I've probably done it in a few segments even today. If we get too bogged down by the culture war, and we start getting, let's say, falling into the trap of being uber motivated to dunk on whatever side that we think deserves criticism, and we're not really politicking in such a way as to be able to come to consensus, however naive or however impossible that may feel at this point, given how the culture war is going, right? We're fundamentally undermining the whole point and the utility, the practical utility for our discourse, which is we need each other. We got to come to consensus. And yeah, we disagree with each other, and sometimes we hate each other's fucking guts, which is sad to say. But we got to come to some sensible policies, and we got to be able to call out hypocrisy on all sides of the political spectrum, not just the right, not just the left, all sides. Wherever hypocrisy is, we should call it out, even in the fucking middle. I'm sure there are some centrists who are fucking hypocritical about some shit too. Some moderate types. It's not exclusive to either extreme in this political spectrum. And sometimes it ain't obvious what the right answers are too. And we gotta deal with our own fallibility and our propensity to develop a unearned sense of certainty in our political views. So I agree with Kyle for the most part. The only pushback I would have is against, he's kind of, getting a little bit too close to what I'm saying we need to try to avoid. But I understand why he's taking delight in this criticism. It's a fair criticism.
So if I'm a socialist, okay, but you're a corporate socialist. And which one would you rather have? Would you rather have somebody who spends money on the people or spends money on the corporations? I think we all know what the voters would prefer in that instance. So, look, he's right. He's calling them out. They're just so dishonest, these Republican politicians. It's all so disingenuous. They're all just posturing. But then when push comes to shove, they know what's popular, they know what's not, and they will get down on their hands and knees and beg for money out of a Democratic package that they voted against. We've seen a number of Republicans bragging about getting projects in their states when they voted against the bill that would give them the money for the project in their home state. I mean, what else can you say about it? You know, it's like some politicians are doing the work and delivering for the people, and then others try to take credit for it as they actively vote against it. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam.
So yeah, that's that. I mean, Calculus is right. I just agree with him across the board on that one. Yeah, I've been critical of Kyle actually in a couple of segments recently, but I just agree with him. He's right. This is fair criticism. There's really no defending it. Now I'm going to have one last attempt to try to steel man the right, just because I just feel like I have to do my due diligence. So I found a right-leaning source that's talking about this from the Washington Examiner. And we shall see if there's any way to steel man this. I have a lot of doubts, though. And you can say it's a product of bias. I'm pretty damn fair when it comes to the right, and I agree with the right on some things, but I don't know, man. This seems inexcusable to me. So, without further ado, the Washington Examiner article: Fiery Biden rebukes socialist Republicans who seek federal money. I like right off the bat, fiery Biden. One of the reasons why I showed you the footage first is because I wanted you to see kind of how he was talking in the tenor. Republicans, y'all can't have it both ways. You can't, on the one hand, argue that Biden is a doddering old fool who's feckless and spineless and weak on the one hand, and then say that he's like lost the plot and he's fiery or some shit on the other, bro. Like, which one is it, fam? Which one is it? Which one is it? He can't be both, bro. He can't be both. Fiery Biden rebukes socialist Republicans who seek federal money, with the scare quotes. All right. That's a great start. Let's see what they got to say. President Joe Biden attacked congressional Republicans on Friday for criticizing his spending proposals as quote-unquote socialist while seeking the money for their constituents once the bills passed. The president has consistently ratcheted up his rhetoric against Republicans ahead of the midterm elections, but Biden, speaking Friday afternoon at a Volvo manufacturing plant in Hagerstown, Maryland, appeared to stray away from his typical remarks at these economic events. During his speech, the president singled out, excuse me. Hold on, let me make sure I'm off mute. Okay, I am. Okay. So, my bad. During his speech, the president singled out National Republican Senatorial Committee Chairman Rick Scott and Senator Ron Johnson. The first one is from Florida, one's from Wisconsin, for threatening to roll back the healthcare reforms included in the recently enacted Inflation Reduction Act. Let's be crystal clear what that means. If Republicans take control of Congress, that means the power we just gave Medicare to negotiate drug prices goes away. Gone. End quote, he said. Quote, these are facts. Check them out. And folks, it's not just the Inflation Reduction Act. They're coming after your Social Security and Medicare as well. End quote. Later in his remarks, Biden read from a story that listed the scores of Republicans, including Rep. Paul Gosar, Senator Rand Paul, who publicly attacked Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law. Quote, the report came out from CNN, says Republican called Biden infrastructure program socialist, and then they asked for the money. And it goes through all the Republicans, the most conservative Republicans, called it socialism, and how they're asking about it. And now they're asking about it, end quote. The president said, quote, socialism. I didn't know there were so many socialist Republicans. Think about it. I'm serious. Let's get serious about taking care of ordinary people, regular people like I grew up. Folks, look, you can't make this stuff up. You got to say, and I've got to say, I was surprised to see so many socialists in the Republican caucus. Okay. All right. And then it ends. Not even the Washington Examiner could defend this shit. It just emphasized how Joe Biden is ratcheting up his his problematic rhetoric against Republicans. That was kind of a desperate and pathetic attempt to, like, I guess, counter the criticism. The criticism is too fair. There's no justification for it. I tried to steel man it. I don't know what else to do. Even the right-leaning source that I found can't fucking steelman that shit. Let's see. All right, I got one more. I found a couple more right-leaning sources. Let's try one more time. I'm trying. It's the last time, dude. I'm getting this is starting to annoy me. Are Republicans? Wait, what? This is not what I want. Hold on. Oh, that's why. Okay. Okay. All we the only thing we have, Fox News is probably not gonna do a better job. But hey, I'm gonna be thorough. Nobody can say I was being biased because I tried. There's the only two sources I found on the subject matter was Fox News and this one. Here we go. From Fox News or Fox Business, actually. Is it Fox Business? Yeah, Fox Business. Biden calls Republicans, quote, socialists who oppose $1.2 trillion infrastructure law and then applied for its funding. Let's see if they can justify what seems to me to be apparent hypocrisy and double standard. Some Republicans have previously referred to Biden's massive infrastructure spending bill as a form of socialism. Okay, here we go. President Biden on Friday called several Republicans socialists after a report revealed that they applied for funding containing the president's signature $1.2 trillion infrastructure law after voting against the legislation in the House. Biden said during a Friday speech in Hagerstown, Maryland, on the state of the economy that he was surprised to see so many socialists in the Republican caucus after he read a report detailing Republican applications for infrastructure funds. It noted that several Republicans in Congress referred to the infrastructure bill as a form of socialism, then asked the Department of Transportation to utilize these infrastructure funds in their districts. Hypocrisy, quote, I didn't know there were so many socialist Republicans, end quote, Biden said in response to the report by CNN. Jab. The president specifically named Rep. Paul Gosar of Arizona, Rep. Andy Barr of Kentucky, and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Biden mentioned portions of the letter sent by Republicans to the Department of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg that praised the necessity of infrastructure projects. He says it enhanced the quality of life, it eased congestion, boosts the economy, Biden said of Gosar. He voted against this, says it's all socialism. Other Republican lawmakers who voted against the infrastructure bill, who wrote letters to Buttigieg, several of the Republican offices reportedly said the infrastructure bill was largely wasteful spending, but that there were small portions of beneficial funds that are needed in their districts. Alex Belize, the communication director for Barr, said Biden's agenda is right in line with socialist ideology. Quote, American socialists in chief shouldn't be calling anyone else a socialist. Belize told Fox News Digital on Friday. Quote, Biden's socialist agenda is bankrupting our country, and we are paying for it at the grocery store, gas pump, and in our 401ks. Now, I mentioned that. That's in general, I can understand why you could argue for limitations for social welfare policies or willing to ensure the social welfare for everyone, insofar as it encompasses overspending and it fucking makes inflation surge. But like, it's the selectivity with which the Republicans apply that logic that is like the linchpin in the hypocrisy. You know what I mean? Like if you're not going to be consistent, then it undermines your stance. Gozer tweeted that he has a consistent record of supporting infrastructure from Democrat and Republican presidents. Quote, I wear Biden's attacks on me when he can say them coherently as a badge of honor, end quote, Gozer wrote. Quote, on some bills I vote no, not because of the infrastructure, but because Pelosi and the radical left includes like climate change and other nonsense. But I'm all in on infrastructure. All right, so maybe you have the makings of something that you can use to steel man them. If they didn't vote no because of the spending, but they voted no because of the pork or the extra shit that was in there, then I guess there's no real hypocrisy necessarily, right? Like if the infrastructure part is the part that they liked, but it was attached to all this other bullshit that they didn't like, then there's no hypocrisy there. Now, the question is, how many of the Republicans is that true for? And there's reasonable doubt that all the Republicans can use that excuse, although they may try to. So that's the best I can do as far as steel manning it. For whatever any Republican who voted no, but did not vote no specifically because of the infrastructure part, but they voted no because of other shit that they didn't like climate change stuff that they don't believe in and stuff like that. And so they voted no on the whole thing because it came, hand in hand with that. Then I guess they're not hypocritical. Any Republican who voted no specifically because even the infrastructure spending they thought was socialist, or they thought the whole thing was socialist, and they didn't really make any distinctions between the infrastructure part and all of the other parts, and then turn around and ask for the money, they're guilty of this hypocrisy. Point blank, period. There, I was nuanced. I made it conditional. And there's really no way to prove whether or not that was in their head when they voted no, though. So, I mean, I don't know if I solved anything. There's reasonable suspicion here, but like, I think that's fair. That's the best I can do. But this looks like just textbook hypocrisy by a lot of these Republicans. So, yeah, I guess. So I guess I'm glad I read that Fox News thing, even though I don't know that it helped all that much. So with that, I've levied my criticisms against the Republicans. I think I did 2 segments. This is the second one. There's other ones that I could do. I probably will do them soon. But I'm kind of tired for tonight, so I'm gonna pack it in. But this has been another current events episode of the Black Muse Podcast. I am your host, Jason Muse, aka the Black Muse. And until next time, peace.